to Unconventional Creatives, episode 4. This is Stacy with you.
And I'm Sandra.
And I'm Dave.
Dave is our special guest today.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's such a pleasure having you on our
It's a
show.
pleasure to be here. I'm happy.
Amazing. So Dave, we wanted to do a little introduction for you, just
Sure.
to let people know what you do and who you are.
My name's Dave Gouveia. I'm a graphic designer by trade. I've been in the business over 25 years. I primarily work in print, but I like to dip my finger into every creative pool. So I have done a lot of projects involving packaging or clothing or movie titles. I'm very big into film, and that's kind of how I got my start in design, was my love of film. And I just worked freelance. I had a studio for 10 years. After that closed, I decided to go on my own, and I've just kind of been doing that ever since.
Amazing. So we wanted to hear a little bit more about your journey and how you got to the place that you are now.
Sure, I mean,
Let's take it way back. What first
Yeah.
got you interested in design, or was it kind of a weird journey?
well, my dad and my grandfather are both painters, and they also do pottery. So there's a lot of creativity that runs through my family. I'm Generation X, so I was kind of one of those latchkey kids who came home to no parents and had free time in front of the television. So I watched a lot of movies, I watched a lot of cartoons, and that was kind of what I did. Because of that love for film was really having a turning point in the 80s with computer animation. So that started to become popular, and people were like, what's this new thing? So I started to do a bit of research after I finished high school, because Star Wars is one of my favorite films. So if I was to ever work on a Star Wars film, I thought, what do I need to do? So I joined St. Lawrence College. I went to the design class. It was 3 years. Moved to Toronto, lived with my sister for a bit while I was working. Applied to Sheridan, but I didn't get in. So Sheridan is one of those schools where the amount of talented people that apply is just beyond. So, but they don't have space for those people. So they really can pick and choose the cream of the crop. And I was not cream of the crop coming out of my school. So I just didn't make the cut. But I liked what I was doing at the design studio that I was working at. So I just thought, you know what, maybe next year I'll reapply. But that just never happened. I ended up staying at the studio that I was at. And one of the projects that I did was actually for IMAX, the large format films, because the new Star Wars series were coming out, and it was Phantom Menace, which is a terrible movie. But I got to work on the poster for Phantom Menace
That's so
for IMAX,
amazing.
right? So it was a little bit of a full circle thing. So it was a bit of a journey to get to that point. I worked at that studio for 5 years. I started to get a bit stale. I was kind of I became the Canadian Tire guy, that was my client, and I did pretty much everything that came in for them. But when you work for a brand like that, they have certain parameters that you need to stick to. You know, they have brand standards, color choices, font choices. It's hard to deviate from those things and still stay on brand. But what that did was it prevented me from cultivating creativity with other things. So that was a problem for me, because I wasn't growing creatively. So I decided, you know, I'm going to leave. And I was in talks with some people that I worked with at the time, and they said, like, we're kind of fed up too, we want to try something new. So 3 of us left that studio and started our own thing. We were working in my apartment for the first year. But, you know, we managed to build a big base. We could go after whoever we wanted. And then we had that studio for 10 years, you know, moving from smaller places like my apartment to like an office to then a bigger place. I did want to talk about this story though, about a thing that happened to me where I was very interested. So I mentioned earlier I was into film growing up. So when film titles became more designed, you know, they went from that really cheap look of just type to like there's a story behind these things. Everyone does that now, but back then nobody did that. And then everyone started being like, ooh, we need to do this. And one company started pretty much doing all of them. So if you saw an opening title for a movie and you thought, holy shit, like Panic Room, and it was this guy's company or himself. So I was really like wrapped up in this guy's work. It was like, it was breaking barriers. It was like unique. It was creative. And I bought like books by him and I was reading all about him. So anyway, there was a conference that came to Toronto and he was speaking at the conference. And I was like, fuck, I gotta go see this guy. He's my hero. And I went and he gave this speech that was, you know, it was part passionate, but then a bit flat and a letdown. And, you know, maybe he was having a bad day or something. And then what he did was he showed some work that didn't get chosen, you know, and like every client, here's the stuff that got produced, but here's the stuff that I did that what didn't get picked. And a lot of the times that kind of stuff is what the designer would say, my favorite stuff. So he showed some of that stuff and I was like, that's terrible. Like,
Really?
I mean,
How come? Usually that's
I don't know. Like, I just thought, like, why is he showing this? This isn't that great.
Well, like another thing can be said that, you know, some people who are great at their craft are horrible at teaching it or just being a public speaker, right? They might be an amazing photographer or filmmaker and they're just not captivating in front of, you know,
Yeah, all
speakers,
creatives
right?
are socially awkward too, so they might not feel comfortable being around people, but behind the scenes they're just creating amazing work.
Yeah.
So.
And I was inspired by his work, so I can't say that the guy's a dud, you know, but seeing his project, his like Project B, and me thinking, ooh, that's not that good. I felt better about myself. I was like, you know, sometimes I can't do good things and I think my stuff's shit, but even these guys can produce crappy stuff too, right? So.
Or maybe it's subjective too. Maybe you think it's crappy.
Yeah,
They don't think it's crappy.
I mean, it was crap.
Sometimes when I work on brands, what I present to people and what they end up selecting, it's usually what they think works best for their business, but it doesn't mean that one concept was better than the other. A lot of the time the rejected work is actually better than the chosen work, but for that one purpose, it is a better fit for that project, for example, and then you just keep it in your back pocket in case you're able to.
This is a fear of mine whenever I'm presenting things, is that I come up with like X amount of ideas, and then one of them is like, I'm like, I really don't like this one.
And it gets chosen.
And it gets chosen, or they say like, can you blend these two things together? And if people ask me to do that, I say no. It's like, these things were not meant to live fused together. They were meant to live on their own, and they each have their own strengths for the reason they were done that way, right? So you cannot mix these two together, but if you like this one more than this one, I can, you know, try to come up with an alternative that possibly uses some of the elements from this.
It's actually a good point that you bring up, because a lot of designers do face that, especially if you're coming up with a brand too. A lot of the time the client will want to have some control over the creative process or put you in a different direction, and when you know from your professional perspective that it might not be a good idea for the greater outcome, then you might have to push back against that. So have you ever had an experience where someone actually wanted to stick with what they wanted to push you towards and not listen to you?
Oh yeah, I mean, I have had situations where I've come up with like what I believe to be brilliant, and the client was like, either I don't get it, or it's not going to work for our purposes, or whatever. So I mean, to your point, client education is very high on the list of talents that you need as a designer or creative person to go in and like really have a relationship with your client. I mean, these are the types of clients I have. Relationship clients. For many, many years, I can swear on the phone with them. You know, I talk to them after hours.
That's all our clients.
If they ask me for something and I think it's unreasonable, I can say, this is unreasonable. And then there's the clients that you just can't do that with. And those ones, if they ask for something, I just do it. If they're paying me and I feel like I'm being paid fair, and I've shown something and they're like, no, we want this, I don't even fight, because it's not worth it to fight with that particular style of client. The friend client, the relationship client, you can talk to them. You can say like, why do you want to do this? Oh, because this. Well, then why don't we do this instead? You know, you can change the path because you have the ability to educate them.
Right.
And say like, are you sure you want to go red? Did you know that like 90% of the companies that are doing this are using red? Oh, I didn't know that. Well, that's why you have me here, friend, to tell you these things.
And they hire you for a reason because they trust your expertise in your work. So
Exactly, right?
we're constantly finding ways to navigate that, and I find that what works for us is we try to walk them through a journey leading up to the creative process, and during that path we try to educate them as to like why we're doing certain things. So before we actually do it, we try to introduce the idea and tell them why we're doing it, and then also why it's important, because not a lot of people know why we do certain things when it comes to branding and business and design, especially. So that part of the process is definitely very important. It's just to educate people and let them know why we're doing it.
And also to ask questions and kind of challenge their assumptions, like you were saying, like, you know, oh, well, I like this idea. Well, why do you like that?
Right.
And why do you think this message is going to resonate more with your audience than something else? And I mean, we've spoken about this before, you know, especially a young woman in business, you have to work so much harder to try to persuade people to see your perspective. So the tactic I use is to try to ask a lot of questions to maneuver them to where I want them to think, because if I just tell them my opinion, they're kind of dismissing it immediately.
Right.
Or at least that's been my experience in the past. But now that we build those relationships built on trust with our clients, it's become a lot easier, thankfully.
And when you get to that point, your clients then, when you have a project, they're more likely to just say like, run with this. Here's the project. I'm not even going to brief you on it. Just like, this is what I need. What are you going to show me? Right? Because they trust you and they know that you can then do what you want. I also do a lot of things for myself, because sometimes if you have client work and it's not inspiring, you might want to do something that is inspiring and gets it out of you creatively, despite the fact that you don't have a client. So in this case, you become your own client. So I used to do a lot of music designs, like compilation CDs, and then I would design the CD with some sort of theme. You know, the music on there has to do with this theme, so I'm going to design it with this theme. And then I would share them with my friends.
I love that. You gotta do those personal projects on the side.
Yeah, you have to. You have to. And you know, I'm sending that link to that mentor site, and actually a girl messaged me last week and said, I want to talk to you about my work. And she,
what was the name of that site?
it was like ADP list, so it's like art directors.
We'll put a link to that in the description when we get it.
So I mean, it's for people who want to be mentors, and also for people who want mentoring. So she was asking me, like, I want to get into the business, what should I do? Here's my website. And I went to her website, and the first thing I saw was a case study. I didn't see her name, I didn't see anything. And then I scrolled, and there was this great photo of her underneath with a little write-up about why she came up with the name of her company. And I had like a 45-minute conversation with her on the phone, and I said, you need to sell yourself, not your projects. What you need to do is you need to sell yourself as a person people want to meet, so that when you meet them, then you can start talking about all your projects. And on her portfolio page, she put like everything she'd ever done. And I'm like, no, pick your 10 favorite things. Oh, I can't pick 10. Well, pick your top 10. And then save the rest for a refresh in 6 months, when you can change the work on your website. It looks like you have new stuff. Right?
I love that idea. That's such a great idea.
So, I mean, everything I was saying to her was kind of counter to what she was used to being told. And, you know, the reason she had the case study, she said, well, you know, X amount of people told me to put a case study at the beginning. And I'm like, but is that the work that you want? Because if you don't want that type of B2B work with case studies and all these, you know, infographics and information, then don't promote that. If you want music and you don't have any music in your stuff, make your own project and post it there.
That's a good point.
Right?
Yeah.
Promote yourself for what you want,
Right.
just to get in the door. Right? And then once you're in the door, then you got to sell like your personality. But when I was hiring a designer, this guy came in hair down to here, and I said to him, what kind of music do you listen to? What do you have in your car right now? And he said, European death metal. And then he proceeded to tell me about everything about death metal. I mean, it was ridiculous. And I thought, this is the guy I want working here, because he's so passionate about that. He's gonna bring that to his work, no matter what, right? As opposed to the person who maybe had a great portfolio, but he was an asshole.
Right.
Like, this guy's always gonna be an asshole, regardless of his work. Whereas this guy, he's gonna get better.
Yeah.
Like, the work will get better, but he's not an ass, right? Your work will get better. Like, I was not great coming out of school. My work got better.
But that same guy could have went into a different agency where they work on corporate projects.
Yeah.
They would have never hired.
Big
They would
ad
have never
agencies,
hired
right?
him. Yeah, they
Yeah.
would have never hired him because they want someone who looks the part, who's gonna go up to corporate people and represent the company. And that's also something very important for people to keep in mind if they're still in their beginning stages
Yeah.
of their career, when they're going to apply to a place. Just because a place rejected you doesn't mean that you suck at what you do, or
Right.
that you're not a good person, or not a personable person. It's more so you're
Or
gonna.
you might be a non-personable person.
Yeah, but you'll always find your way to where you fit in the most, and where a place that's gonna reflect your style and your energy. And just because one place didn't work out, maybe that was not the place for you. But yeah, there's a right place for everyone.
Right,
And
right.
if not, then people can just make their own place.
Right.
Yeah. I'm curious to know if you were to meet the old you,
Oh,
the one that was just getting started in his career, knowing what you know now, what would be something that you would want to tell yourself?
well, I definitely think, even to this day, I'm very hard on myself for my work. I put in a lot of effort. I think it's good, but I question myself a lot of the time. And then I see other people's work, and I'm like, oh, I'm just not that good. Like, I could do better. Why am I not that good? And I don't think that that's true at all. I think I have talent, and I think that I've shown it because of the clients I have, because of the business I've retained, because of the history with, like, I've had a studio for 10 years, I've had clients for 20 plus years. Like, that wouldn't have happened if I was no good. But I just keep beating myself up on that. So, I mean, if I was to go back in time and see my old self, I would be like, have a little bit more confidence, be a little bit more proud of the work that you're doing, even if you feel it's not that good, because it's work that you've done, like, you used your brain to come up with something. It's your brain, it's no one else's brain, so no one else is ever gonna have that thought in the world. It's singular to you. And while it might not be great, it's still yours, which makes it special, and therefore it could be great. So for sure, I would say to myself, like, do not do that. Don't beat yourself up.
And even if it was not great, you're gonna learn something along the way.
You'll get better.
Teach you something.
Like,
It may be a great lesson.
that would have been the lesson. I would have said, like, I know you're worried now, but you'll get better. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk to you about this stuff all day. But yeah, it was such a pleasure.
No, I had a great time.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe to our channel. Once you do that, if you want to hit that bell, you'll be notified when we release new videos. Don't forget to join our Facebook group as well. You'll find a link to that down below where we post any of our new videos. Dave, where can people find you online?
You can find me at my website, davegouveia.com. G-O-U-V-E-I-A. I'm sure you'll
Well,
put
We will
you'll
put
put
the
a link.
link down there.
It's
And
got every vowel. That's a very unique name.
amazing. Well, thank you so much.
All right.
This was
Thank
so
you.
much fun.
Thanks.
All right, we'll catch you guys in the next episode.